Nope, that was the first one. Sorry about that. Let me just look through it at a couple things. You got it. There is Monday. We have everybody. Sorry.
We good? All right, I'd like to call Public Safety Committee meeting to order, November 23rd, 2020 at 10:06 a.m. We have a quorum present, and we need a motion to approve the minutes of prior committee meetings. I have October 19th and October 26th. Were there any other meetings? I think that was about it. So moved by Supervisor Shepler. Is there a second? Supervisor Simpson, thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will start out here with the Warren County Office of Emergency Services. I'd like to call up the new director, Anne Marie Mason, who has been here a couple weeks. And Anne Marie, would you like to say a few words before we get into the agenda?
Sure. Actually, I'm actually very happy to be here. I love what I do, and I love actually jumping right in and starting off things. So that's it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you're jumping right in. For
I
sure.
am.
So, I have one change on our 4 items. Here, I'd like to move number 4 to be number 3, and we'll take number 3 as number 4. Okay. So, first one, resolution request for new contract with Waterborne Inventors LLC for service and maintenance for Warren County Marine Rescue Team and Warren County Sheriff's Office Dive Team equipment in an amount not to exceed $5,000 a year. Motion to bring it to the floor. Supervisor Sieber moves it, second by Supervisor Simpson. We have a motion on the floor. Would you like to describe this contract?
All right. Well, I looked at it somewhat to make sure to see if there was any changes. This is actually a new contract. It's not a renewal. I did look at what we've spent. We've not gone up to the 5,000 ever, so that's a good thing. And with this, there's really not much of a change in the cost of the services. We did a comparison with the contract from last year and this year, and I did not see a huge change of anything. So,
okay. Thank you. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Number 2. The resolution request for a new contract with Waterborne Inventors LLC for dive training services in amount not to exceed $5,000 per year. And can you describe? A motion brings us to the floor.
motion.
Supervisor Bramer, second by Supervisor Simpson. How is this different than the first one?
The first one is for service and maintenance, which would be repair items. The second contract is for training. So with that one, I did review some of the items from last year. There are some slight increases, but nothing that is really more than, it's negligible, the increases. So I think it should be okay.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. So now we go down number 4. Resolution request for transfer of funds between General Ledger Code A3410 Fire Prevention and Control and A3640 Civil Defense to correct salary and fringe appropriations for the OES Director and OES Temporary Fire Coordinator. Motion to bring it to the floor. Supervisor Shepler, second by Supervisor Simpson. Thank you. Any description on this?
Basically, it was just to realign the budget based on me coming on board as a director and moving the fire coordinator salary, separating the two. So it's just realigning them where they need to be in the budget.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you, Chairman Leggett. Ms. Mason, has there been a salary study done on this position?
Not that I'm aware of.
Typically when we adjust salaries, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, you may describe which salary you're talking
Well, the request in front of us right now, unless I'm mixing up my numbers here, we're talking about a transfer from the Fire Prevention Control Civil Defense of 11,971 and putting it over to the Fire Prevention Control line of 10, right? Is that what we're talking about right now?
Yes.
Okay, so
That page.
if you prefer, I wait for number 4. If you'd like to take these together, that's fine. But
Okay.
I just, in your comments, you said realign the salaries. So what I'm looking to find out is based on what information will that be realigned?
It was just budgeted in the wrong section of the emergency services. That's all.
It was put in the wrong code.
Right.
So this one's for the wrong code. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, so my question stands for your next item, but when you said realign,
Right, yeah.
so this is a budget, just an error in the code.
Or it's housekeeping to make sure that the right funds are under the right code. The money is all there, but it's separating out the thing for the new director and her duties. This is the adjustment. Am I correct on that, Brian? That this is housekeeping to get.
Yeah. Yes, it's just housekeeping. When the director position was budgeted for the new director, that ought to be budgeted outside of the fire division. It ought to be budgeted in the civil defense division. So this is right.
We're not changing the amounts. We're just changing the code.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor of the transfer of amounts, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. So now we go to number 3, which is now number 4. Resolution request to create and fill the position of county fire coordinator part-time, base salary $25,967.50. Motion to bring it to the floor. There. Anybody out there in Zoom land? Okay, don't see anybody. Around the table, who'd like to bring
I'll
it to
bring
the
it to the
floor?
table, Chairman.
Okay, I have Supervisor Simpson and Supervisor Bramer on second. Okay. Anne Marie, would you like to describe this?
Yes, so this position is going to be a part-time county fire coordinator. As best as we can determine, it would be a 24-hour week position. And we determined the salary at $25,967.50. We had determined this based off of the job description and the requirements that this person would have to fill. And we aligned it with our salary grade in 11, I believe. And we just decided, to look at that as a part-time position, taking it from 40 hours down to 20. So that's how we arrived at taking that base salary and dividing it in half.
And you'll see in your packets, you have this step and grade, non-bargaining salary grid in front of you, so you can follow along with what was just mentioned. So if we look at this, it's a grade 11 entry level, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It says 16. Am I looking at the wrong thing?
I don't know.
What you're looking at, Claudia, on the position list, that's the temporary position that Brian LaFleur is in right now. That's a grade 16 hourly rate.
So let's just put up on Zoom there. This is the chart that we're looking at.
I did not. I'll propose. Okay.
Right.
Thanks.
So Brian's position is capped at $10,000, but the hourly rate is the equivalent of a grade 16, which is the grade that he's at as director.
Thank you.
Right.
Just to add on to that question, if I may,
Yes.
the position he's at right now, you mean currently as, can you just clarify for me, because he did both the fire and the OES. So is the grade 16 reflective of that? Or you're saying the grade 16 is reflective of that $10,000 fire coordinator position?
So if you look at those grades on the grid, you see 16. The entry salary is $69,500. Follow that all the way over to the 20th, or excuse me, the 15th increment, $83,009. You see that?
I do.
So that was Brian's salary as director,
Doing both
and
duties.
he has retained that hourly rate as temporary fire coordinator during this transition period. So the temporary fire coordinator is a 16,
Uh-huh.
and the position so we're going to do away with the temporary fire coordinator, create a permanent fire coordinator part-time at a grade 11. That's the proposal.
You're looking questioning. Are you
Well,
following
it's
that?
just the only reason he's at a 16, and then that's the hourly rate, is because he was the director doing both of those, and his longevity was taken into consideration. It's not necessarily because we've done a salary study and said, okay, the fire coordinator position warrants X, Y, and Z. You looked at, obviously, internal information, rewrote that job description from what he initially had. I've seen both versions of it. I'm just saying, I don't know if I'm comparing apples to apples. That's all.
It seems that to cover this transition period with the temporary position,
Uh-huh.
well, we took the director's salary and adjusted it accordingly per the number of hours. Is that correct?
That's right.
Right.
So the board approved filling the temporary fire coordinator position at the grade 16 hourly rate that Brian was making as director.
Mhm.
So where we're at now is trying, when we phase Brian out of the transition and have somebody permanently in the fire coordinator, is the task at hand with where should that position come down in terms of the hourly rate. The $10,000 is that's a not to exceed. So for the calendar year, as long as Brian's in that position at that hourly rate, we don't exceed the 10,000. But the question for today is what should the grade ought to be for the permanent part-time position?
My last question, that it is in the next year's budget only at $10,000.
Yes, the next year's budget currently is 10,000 because we don't make an amendment to next year's salary schedule until the board of supervisors acts on it. That's our process.
Right. My only concern, Mr. Chairman, is just with the process to come up with that dollar, that amount. That's all. That's why I asked about the salary study.
Okay,
That's all.
thank you. And to reiterate what Director Mason had said, the salary study was an internal one. It was looking at all the jobs, and that's what's listed in our packet here today, going through
Right.
what would be the equivalent responsibilities. And through HR and probably civil service, correct, they came up with, it's the equivalent of a grade 11.
Within our county, I'm asking for a salary study that compares other positions throughout the state to comparative counties such as ours. It's my understanding that has not been done.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
thank you,
Looked
Mr.
into
Chairman.
that, Supervisor Brennan had actually asked that, and I had looked into that, and it has not gone outside to see what there is. Supervisor Brennan?
Thank you so much. I was looking at the salary grid there. We have also our OES coordinator is at a 10, and that for the entry level is $48,955. So are we paying our OES coordinator $48,955?
No, the OES coordinator is out on that schedule according to years of service. I don't have that particular salary for the incumbent in front of me right now, but she's not making the entry level.
But she's making at the grade 10 all the way across at that base salary, plus her longevity.
Right. So that position is a grade 10. So whatever her salary might be, it's going to be on that grade 10 line.
Okay, but it's also my understanding that she doesn't get paid, she's not paid as a part-time employee with this, whatever her amount is, let's say it's 55. She only gets paid for the number of hours that she's working.
No, she's full time.
It's a 40-hour week job, so it's based on 40-hour week, including all the benefits that come with a full-time position, which would be health insurance.
What I'm trying to get at is where did we come up with 24 hours a week?
20 hours.
20 hours a week.
20 hours a week.
So HR, civil service, the director, Anne Marie Mason, and the former director, Brian McClure, sat down and tried to determine what would be an appropriate grade, as well as an appropriate number of hours per week based on the job duties. That was their determination.
I just have a hard time. When we were budgeting for 10,000 a year, and now we're tripling that.
That's right. You know what? This is probably a good time to segue into the organizational chart. We have a motion on the floor. Let's remember that. That's been first and seconded to create and fill a position. But let's to see. This has been a confusing for all of us on committee here because of the unsurety of exactly what direction this is going in. But what you have in your packet here is this organizational schedule. So everybody turn to that and take a look. And if you're online, you can pull it off your PDF from our agenda website. You can find the agenda website. So. And I'm going to turn it over to Director Mason here to describe this proposed organizational chart on the reorganization. Anne Marie, can you take it from here?
Sure. So on the organizational chart, you'll see that they've got the OES coordinator underneath me, and then there is the emergency services coordinator, and then the fire coordinator. So underneath the fire coordinator's piece, there is a lot of responsibilities, a lot of different levels underneath the fire coordinator. And that was one of the reasons why, one of the other reasons why we thought that that position should be at grade level 11, because of the responsibilities that are beneath that position.
I'm going to see. Tammy, can I share my screen?
You can.
Thank you. There we go. Okay. So for those on Zoom and not those on the board, what is that? Amy, can you get it so that we can see the whole? Would that work? Sorry. So previously, when this position was created back in 2007, it was specially created, formulated to be able to have the director of the OES to also be fire coordinator. The skills of people we're looking at the time fit that. So that's how it has been since then. As time has gone on since 2007, the role of fire coordinator has increased. And I'll let temporary fire coordinator LaFleur come up and describe the differences between then and now and what the job requirements are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will start my conversation with, I'm really sorry this created some turmoil on me retiring, but I didn't realize that was going to be the case. But originally, the director of fire coordinator position did not, both from the emergency management side and from the fire coordinator side, was nowhere near what it is today. A lot of the things have changed, the requirements from both the federal and state government, the amount of paperwork that's required to accomplish those tasks. So when we were looking at this and my possible departure, we felt that it would be worthwhile to separate the fire coordinator. That would do two things. Number one, it would split some of the work up. Number two, the main thing was also when you have the director / fire coordinator, the fire coordinator has some requirements to be qualified to take that job, which many people who could be a good director cannot meet if they've never been a fire chief. And that's what one of the requirements is to be the fire coordinator. You have to have been so many years in a line or fire chief position. So in order to make it so that we could have a better job being done as hiring a new director, that's why we split those out. Also, the amount of time that's involved. When you're talking, I will answer one quick question you were asked about where did we come up with 20 hours? It's very simple. Anything over 20 hours is a tested position for civil service. Anything under 20 hours is not. So, in working with Trish Nenninger from the Civil Service Office, she suggested that as we start out here, we listed in the ad for that position that it could be tested just to cover our butts. But that's the difference between 20 and anything above that. So that was where that number came from. There wasn't a major study. I know a great portion of the fire coordinators and emergency managers across the state, and there is a wide variation of how they're doing this. Saratoga County, they have the director, emergency manager, and they have the fire coordinator. The fire coordinator is the deputy director, and they have a full-time EMS coordinator. They have a lot more money than we do. There are other counties north of us where it's still the director/fire coordinator position. The deputy director is the number 2 guy. He could be the guy that's running the 911 center if the 911 center is under OES. There's a lot of different variations, but that's generally how it's being done. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yes, and I have a few others for the description of this fire coordinator. To give us an idea of some of the duties, obviously there's calm days and there's busy days. What changes between the two? What are some of the events that could happen that would require a fire coordinator to be on board for more than, say, 20 hours a week or,
It all depends on, they describe it in law as any incident in which firefighters can be used. They don't spell out car accidents or floods or fires or whatever. That's the terminology they use as far as what the fire coordinator needs to be capable of taking care of. On a day-to-day basis, you're dealing with the training. We have to take care of advertising and signing up the students for all the training. We have to take care of the burn reports that come from the state. A lot of people don't realize how many people in our county get burned. Anytime somebody gets burned and goes to the hospital, we have to maintain the burn report, and we have a file that maintains all of that. That's part of our office. We have the cause and origin, all the investigations and stuff, and the coordinator has to be responsible for when they get called. Doesn't do the actual investigation, but he has to be capable of understanding what's going on, where they're at, and whether or not we need to bring in outside help, i.e. from state OFPC. OFPC requires that every single fire call in Warren County that there is a report called the BFIR, Basic Fire Incident Report. Each fire department is required to submit those to the state. Unfortunately, they don't all do that very well. So our office ends up having to deal with that for certain departments. Some don't have computers, some don't have good internet, some don't bother to do it. We take that on purpose so that we make sure we have 100% participation in that reporting. And that's important because those numbers as far as participation not only go to the state, but that also affects how much grant money the state gets from the feds. So if the state across the state is not maintaining a good participation record, then that affects everything. So we need to be careful with that. The other big one that a lot of people are not aware of is called the RFA, Regional Fire Administrator. Regional Fire Administrator is a position in each county where in the event that the governor calls a state of emergency or the administrator of OFPC activates the state mutual aid plan, at that point in time, the fire coordinator is no longer the fire coordinator, he's the RFA. He's the Regional Fire Administrator. What that means is that person now has the responsibility and the authority to order fire departments or to assign them to whatever needs to be done. When Sandy or something smaller than that, any incident happens in the state, if they call me and say, Brian, we need 3 ladder trucks, we need them in Utica now. As the Regional Fire Administrator, I have the authority to make that happen. I can contact the fire departments that have that equipment, see if it's available. If it is, I have the authority to have them do that. And the reason you need that authority is when someone leaves the area, especially if they leave the county, there's a lot of liability issues. What happens if they get in an accident? What about the liability for the firefighters? All these things have to play into that. So as regional fire administrator, you have to track all of this. You have to keep track who's going where are they going, how long are they going to be there? And again, that's just one piece of it. There's a lot of different other things that the regional fire administrator does. So that's a couple that I think you probably are not aware of as far as what's involved in the coordinator's job. Do these things occur every single day? No. I'll be the first one to admit they don't. What does happen is 24/7, 365. You carry a pager on your belt. My average goes off twice every night while I'm sleeping. Goes off 3 or 4 times a day. And these are the things that the fire coordinator deals with. I don't go to all the fire calls. That's why I have deputies. My deputies are split between the northern end, Teddy Little, the center of the county, Scott Combs, the Queensbury, Glens Falls area, Trip Miller. Those guys are assigned to those areas. If there's need for a coordinator in those areas, they go. Now that sounds easy, but it's not, because they all have full-time jobs. So if I know if Chip Mellon is working for the city of Glens Falls Fire Department, he's not going to leave his job. So if there's an incident in Queensbury or Glens Falls, then I go. That could be the same thing up in Chestertown or North Creek. It could be the same thing in Lake George, Bolton, whatever. So that's a scenario that the fire coordinator has to do all the time. We are continually tracking each other to make sure we know everybody is and that you're available. If I have to go to a meeting in Albany, I can't say no, I can't just drive away. I have to notify my other coordinators that that's what's happening. So if we get paged and the radio room wants to speak to a coordinator, we already have it set up as to who's going to take that call and how are they going to handle it. So without getting into all the things the fire coordinator can be involved in, we tend to be an intermediary between problems between fire departments. Also sit on the EMS advisory board and a number of other things. We're good or bad, EMS and fire kind of get intermixed anyhow. So I don't know if that helps you at all, but that's just a list of some of the things that you may not. I'll be very frank with you. Riding around with your lights and siren on going to calls is about 5% of the job. 95% of the job is administrative. Whether you like it or not, and there are some people that look at it. It's the same thing with the fire chiefs and the volunteer fire service. Everybody wants to be chief. Everybody wants to be an assistant chief because you get lights and you have a siren. That's great, but that's very small compared to what the job entails. The fire coordinator oversees the fire training center. The fire training center is a combination of Warren and Washington counties. We're 50-50 partners in that. Warren County is the fiduciary. That means that anything that has to be done there, the gentleman that we have that works there part-time, all those things fall under the fire coordinator's office. Plus all the equipment. The equipment that we're fortunately going to be able to put into the new building, some of that is fire related. All that equipment that's sitting out there, somebody has to maintain that. Somebody has to change oil. Somebody has to make sure the batteries are. Again, one more thing that falls on the fire coordinator's plate.
And the fire advisory board. Describe the relationship of the coordinator to the fire advisory board and what's involved with that.
The fire advisory board is the only board made up of volunteers or people that are selected that is a legal entity in state law. The fire advisory board is exactly that. They are designed to be an assistance to the fire coordinator. The fire coordinator appoints all the members to the fire advisory board. The fire advisory board is distinct in state law that says when you pick the members of the fire advisory board, you have to make sure that you're equally picking people across your county. In other words, I couldn't make it all with Queensbury guys. I have to pick guys from each of the towns, anybody that's interested, and to make sure that's done. So any policy changes that are going to be made, This is where a lot of discussion is had, things that we want to look at, if we have something we want to change in our dispatch protocol. All of those items, that happens in the fire advisory board.
And this policy that you set as fire coordinator, along with the fire advisory board, that has to be in cooperation with all of the fire departments throughout the county, correct?
It's interesting that, again, a legal document. There is a front page of that has a number of positions that need to be signed off on. The first one has to be signed off by the fire coordinator. Then it's signed off, if it's going to an individual department, not the chief. It goes to their administrative people, whether it's a president, chairman of the board, head of your fire commissioners, whatever, because it's a legal document and it indicates how it should be done. Then it goes to all OFPC in Albany. It goes down there and they review it, make sure that everything is covered. Lots of times they'll pick up something as simple as, we don't have a sexual harassment policy in it. Never thought we did, I guess, but these days you have to. So these are the kinds of things that they point out to us when they send it back to us. These are things that need to be done. And it has to be signed off by the Board of Supervisors. The last time this was done was 2017. We have not updated it since 2017 for a very simple reason. We've been unable to get OFPC to respond to us giving it to them and their response as far as what needs to be changed. So we are operating that mutual aid plan without their sign off. They have it, they know about it. A conference call that we had last week with the administration from OFPC, they're indicating, oh, we understand it's a problem, and in 2021, there'll be a 2-week turnaround on your mutual aid plans. After we all got done laughing, we said, okay, well, we'll see how that goes. So we have updated our mutual aid plan as simple as it needs to be, and we will be forwarding that to the state again, hopefully, with getting something back from them, whatever changes need to be made. We then will pass it along down that chain of people that need to sign off on it. But that is the document that describes how things are going to operate in Warren County, what officers we have, what directors, what fire coordinators, all the different things that we have, how we operate. I'll give you a quick instance. It's in law that if you are a fire department and you send your fire truck to the fire department next door to help them, they call you mutual aid. Anything that gets damaged during that, they lose a piece of equipment, an air pack fails, or you wreck the fire truck, it is the responsibility of the agency that called you to pay for that. Now, as you can guess, that leads to some very interesting things, i.e., guys that went to Sandy drove a $600,000 fire truck into the water, unfortunately got sucked into the carburetor or the air intake, and did $200,000 or $300,000 worth of damage to the truck. Now, you can't go to the fire department where you were and try to get the money from them. They didn't call you. The state of New York called you. So we have the exact same situation when our Marine Rescue Team gets called. Marine Rescue Team is made up of people from 6 different fire departments. That's done automatically by the radio room. They get an incident that involves water rescue, they send out the tones for the Marine Rescue Team. If someone is responding as Marine Rescue Team and they damage equipment, they can't go back on the local fire department because they aren't the ones that actually called them. So this was written into our mutual aid plan. Another section of the policy was put in that handles that. Basically says your equipment, you're responsible for it. To make that happen as far as that particular piece of it goes. These are the kinds of things that have to end up in these policies.
Yeah. So this is a pretty complex job altogether. And on this, we have allotted 1,040 hours, 20 hours a week, 52 hours, 52 weeks a year. Would there be flex time in this? And this is either to you or to Anne Marie.
The arrangement that we have made with the new director, and this was, as she and I interviewed every single candidate for the job, this was discussed at length. This is not a punch the clock job. You're not going to stop and punch the clock on your way to a fire. It just doesn't work that way. things happen. There's a lot of things that go on that just isn't something that you keep track of hour-wise. So the situation, which works very well, which is appropriate, is that the fire coordinator has an outline of 20 hours per week. He may work 15 hours this week and he may work 27 next week. That is done in cooperation with the director. The director handles payroll and is responsible for the time that each of the employees spends. And the fire coordinator and the director will have to communicate each week and say, where are we at? How did you make out? It could be you're at a fire for 5 hours one night, you come in, you don't come in the next day. That's just one day you don't come in. You can do it like that, like comp time, you can do it however you want, but you can't make it a punch the clock job because it doesn't. That's why the fire coordinator jobs, if they're full-time, are always salaried.
And even on part-time, you need to have that flexibility, whoever is called, if you have to go out to a fire during midday or midnight, they need to be available.
Exactly. And again, that falls on the director who's responsible for the payroll for that department. It's on them to make sure that they're getting what they're paying for.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Supervisor Bramer?
Thank you. I did make this motion because I do think we need to have a fire coordinator, given the circumstances. I appreciate having all of this information about what you just went through about the job duties. I do find this table a little bit misleading, I think, because these positions under the fire coordinator, those are not people who are paid by the county, correct? Or are these all paid county employees?
I'm sorry, which people are you talking about, Claudia? The only people that are not paid for by the county on that organizational chart is on the far right-hand side where it says state fire instructor.
Okay.
My department is responsible to schedule them, to find out what fire departments want a particular class, to sign the people up for that class, and to maintain that, get the books for them. We do everything but pay them to teach the class. The payroll that they get to teach the class, the guys that you see on the far right-hand side, they're paid by the state of New York.
Okay, so we pay for cause and origin investigation, isn't that through the city?
Cause and origin, hazmat, decon, the hazard mitigation.
And you were talking about the melon coordinator.
That's the guys on the left of the fire coordinator.
Right, so the county pays each of those people?
Yes, part-time. It's about somewhere around $5,600 a year, which is a really good deal considering these people are on 24/7 call. They have to drive their own car. They beat that up, and I give those guys a lot of credit to do it for what they do.
Wow. Okay, so we do that, and then over here on the left, the EMS coordinator, it's kind of the same situation. We pay them, and they're on call 24/7.
Exactly. You have your EMS coordinator, Mickey Guy, who's sitting over here, and then you have your deputy EMS coordinator.
And so Mickey, she's paid approximately 12,000
Correct.
by the county, and she's on call 24/7
Yes.
and does whatever we tell her to do under her
She does whatever the director tells her.
under her responsibilities as an EMS coordinator.
Correct.
Okay, and we have budgeted 10,000 for fire coordinator. That would be an annual amount that we pay to the fire coordinator to be on call for 24/7.
Unfortunately, the confusion here is with the $10,000. The $10,000 that was discussed was purely for the temporary fire coordinator position. Has nothing to do with the fire coordinator after they get hired. That is a completely different scenario. The $10,000 was to cover my time until I get done training somebody, which I hope would be towards the beginning of the year. And that would be all set. He would be done. And then whatever was on that 10,000 gets reverted back into the system. And that's when your new fire coordinator and his budget or his payroll come into effect. The 10,000, if you look at the resolution, it was done to create the temporary fire coordinator position, which you just voted on recently to renew it because it ran out because we didn't hire a new fire coordinator back in March. That's why that is the way it is. But that's where the $10,000 number came. Am I correct, Brian?
That's correct.
So does the committee have enough information at this time to be comfortable with creating and filling a temporary? Oh,
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Then see you right next to me, Supervisor Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we go back to when this law was adopted, law number 6, 2007, there were 2 independent positions, and at some point in time, somebody decided to combine them, correct?
Not really. Let me go through that. But back at that time,
It says it's a mandated position, but is that mandated?
it is, and we had a fire coordinator. He also was the director of the Office of Building Codes.
Okay.
That was Marv Lemery. When building codes was taken away and put into a separate department, you have your building codes department over in the Hudson Human, or the Human Services Department. That was separated out. But then you had the fire coordinator. The Office of Emergency Management for the county was run by John Farrell. I don't know if you remember knew John. John ran that. His office was in Warrensburg under DPW. That was civil defense. So when they said it's foolish to have him up there with his own secretary, Marv's down here with his secretary, let's try to make this work better. And that was when the decision was made to create the Office of Emergency Services. And at the time, Marv, who created that, he decided to go with the director/fire coordinator position because he had done and is the fire coordinator, and he heads up that department. So I don't know if that answers your question. That's how we got where we are today. And that worked fine until you reach a point where you may want to hire somebody as director that isn't already a fire coordinator, that doesn't have those qualifications. And that's how we ended up where we are today.
I guess the question would lead into, wouldn't it be more beneficial and economically viable for the county to have you mentioned you're going to be here for $10,000 and train someone to be the fire coordinator? Why don't we have you train the individual that is currently taking your position to be fire coordinator also, rather than splitting these up into 2 separate positions and saving the county money?
I can't answer.
Why wouldn't that make sense?
That was done. The answer that you're dealing with is the answer, or the question was made, or the decision was made back in, I think, Ryan, we thought 2019 February somewhere, or I'm sorry, September, November.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out which month it was in 2019, but it was towards the end, I believe, of 2019.
It was October.
So I guess my follow-up question would be, thanks, is that in fact, by you retiring, we're looking to increase the amount of money that's required to run that department, because we're going to have to train someone that's currently not a fire coordinator for that position. It's going to cost us more money.
It's not going to cost you for the training, but yes.
The positions.
The positions, yes, sir. The difference you're going to see is my salary at $83,000, the new director's salary at $67,000. There's a little bit of money there. And what you're looking at paying the new fire coordinator, whatever you guys come up with for a number, yes, there will be I don't have a calculator in front of me. I'm not that good at math. You know, you're looking at like a $15,000 uptick in that budget.
I did the math before the meeting started. If you look, the budget for 2019, or for 2020 was $10,000 plus $83,009 for a total of $93,009. So the number that's being proposed today, $25,968 plus $69,005 for the director. That's $95,468. So that's an increase from 2020 to 2021 of $2,459.
That is
Okay. Okay. Mr. Gary, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr.
No, I was just going to answer Jack's question. The current administrator doesn't have the qualifications to be a fire coordinator. That's the reason why. I mean, had the person selected had the qualifications to be fire coordinator, I believe they would have handled both jobs. very similar salaries. But the reason why we can't do it now is because the person in the position of OES doesn't have the qualifications to become, because you have to have 5 years as a fire chief and such and such. That's why I'm chatting. Okay, that was an easy question to answer.
Supervisor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you would just indulge me for a moment.
Indulge me.
I'm sorry, Mr. Garrity. I see that makes you leave the room.
Yeah.
However, it's relevant.
Proceed.
Thank you. I have a series of questions that I'm hoping to get answers for. I'm sure that if we had talked about this position, specific position of fire coordinator in our committee after we hired Ms. Mason, all these questions could have been addressed before now, and we wouldn't be sitting here with so many confused looks on our faces and wondering how on earth a job announcement was put on social media, not in the paper, not for the $10,000 that we were all on the same page for, but for almost $27,000. I'm sure that stunned most of us to see that come out without any discussion here within our committee. For that, it's frustrating and disappointing. What I would like to know, you've answered my question. We did not do an outside salary study. We did an internal salary study. We did not advertise in the newspaper. Is that correct?
Somebody can affirm that?
It was advertised per the civil service department directors. That is the same method that they use for any job that they post. They went on the county's website. I can't tell you all the different ones. We did not do that. That was done in-house at the civil service office.
It's my understanding this was not advertised in the newspaper. Additionally, it's also.
But for all clarity here, it's advertised as civil service always advertises, correct?
That's right.
Yes.
So you're telling me civil service never advertises in our newspaper?
I don't have the answer to that.
Because the last time we advertised for Mr. LaFleur's position, we did not advertise on social media. It was upon my request on your third round of interviews that we advertised on social media. So in that instance, civil service did not utilize social media at all. They only utilized the paper, which is where that was advertised. So I don't see the consistent policy there. But regardless, putting that aside, I also am under the impression that this position of fire coordinator has not been approved by the Civil Service Commission, but it is still pending classification. Is that correct?
It doesn't require classification unless it goes over 20 hours.
But previously, your position of fire coordinator was not approved by the Civil Service Commission.
No, because it was a management position, director or department head.
Because it was combined with the OES position.
With the director position.
Correct.
Correct.
Have interviews been conducted on this position?
Yes.
Has a candidate been selected?
Yes.
I think this process was done backwards. I think it's flawed. The other day, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, you talked about the weight of committee. And when things go through a committee, it should be given significance. It should be weighted. We should say we've had committee members who have engaged in dialogue, have weighed the pros and cons. I still fail to recognize how our EMS coordinator is at about approximately 12,000, yet we're looking at a position of almost 26,000, which, by the way, the salary that it was advertised at is not the salary that we're all discussing here today. It would be my suggestion that we go back out, advertise correctly for the duties involved in this at the appropriate salary as determined by this committee after a complete salary study is done. Mr. LaFleur has indicated that he would stay on for a few months until such time that training is completed. I don't see why we're rushing this within 4 weeks of a new hire of a brand new position. And in fact, it was a brand new position that we hired Ms. Mason for. We did not fill Brian LaFleur's shoes. And I think we can all agree that's a pretty tough lift to have to do. So I'm tempted to make a motion to lay on the table for more information. And I believe that this is the appropriate venue of which we would utilize a motion to lay on the table, given the fact that more information is needed. However, I'm asking for consideration from this committee to perhaps have another opportunity to really find out how on earth the position was authorized from 10,000 to 27,000, put out on social media, interviewed candidates, hired or selected a candidate, and we are just now having a discussion about it. I think the process is flawed, and we all sat around and had a lot of discussions about replacing Brian LaFleur. It could have been talked about at any other point in time. It seems a bit I don't know, secretive. Those are just my opinions.
Okay. Let's see if we can handle all of those concerns.
And like, you don't have to right now. If you prefer not to, we can talk about it another
No,
time.
we're pushing all the other committee meetings behind. We have not gotten to the sheriff yet. We do have human services here, coming
To my
up
point, perhaps we should.
in 4 minutes. But let me bring this out onto a larger scope of things. What is the role of committee? What is the role of board of supervisors? What's the role of department head and their authorities? What's the role of the county administrator and human resources and what I call civil rights? Pat manager. Civil services. Civil services. And on all of this, and where do we come in? And where do we start micromanaging? And where do we start leading the direction in the end? So let me put this out to our committee right here. Is there a need for a fire coordinator in the Office of Emergency Services? Yes or no?
I'm not convinced that there is.
By law, there is.
That's a law that was created by the county. Right?
I think not.
State law 225A tells us that any county may create the position of fire coordinator, but once that was done by this county, I can't tell you what resolution that was. It would have been a long time ago. Once that's done, yeah, you got to have one.
Could the fire coordinator be the chief of the Glens Falls Fire Department, chief of the Queensbury Central, chief of Queensbury other municipal fire organizations? Could we combine that responsibility, save the county money, and have someone from those departments that are currently trained to be the fire coordinator?
I'm going to give you my dissertation
It's
on this.
it's really a yes or no question.
Pardon me?
It's really a yes or no question. Could we conceivably reach out to the chief and all of these other fire departments
Asking
and
through the
ask
chair.
them if they're interested in taking on the responsibility of saving the county some money?
So I'll redirect Supervisors Diamonds to break this into 2 sections. The theoretical, can it be done? And then the practical.
There's a couple things you need to think about here. Number one, if you tack on another job onto a paid fire chief's job, you're going to run into labor laws relative to working overtime. Anytime you do, let's say you say, okay, you now have a 60-hour-a-week job. There are going to be issues with it.
All I asked you was a simple question. Could we conceivably ask a chief of another fire district organization to perform the job? I'm not interested in labor laws. I'm just curious if we can reach out and ask them the question to save us some money. That's all.
Understood. The chief and first assistant chief in Queensbury Central are 2 of the 8 candidates. We also have a lieutenant from the city of Glens Falls Fire Department who also is a candidate for this job. Other than that, I can't tell you more.
So you answered my question. We could
Legally,
have that discussion with the chief or someone else to be fair.
legally, yes.
Okay, thank you.
In my world, Mary, you may have something better for that. I'm sorry.
No, thank you. No, you answered my question.
Yeah, so legally speaking, yes. Practically speaking, though, for the job demands as they've been laid out, can that fit in? I think that was the reply there.
Frank, let me add one thing to that. I apologize. I've been asked this question recently a number of times. Should the fire coordinator be an officer or some kind of line position in another fire department? The answer is there is no law against it. The reality is it makes it very hard to do. There are things that occur, i.e. the perception of one agency getting preference from the fire coordinator compared to others. And the other real issue is, I ran into it, Mark ran into it, I know exactly how it goes. If you are in a volunteer department or any fire department and you are acting at the scene of an incident, whether you drove the truck, whatever it is, and at that time, that call becomes mutual aid. And the services of the fire coordinator are required. which hat you have on. Chances are the hat for the fire coordinator job is in your truck back at the firehouse. But I found this incredibly difficult to do. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's a law, but in my world, it is a best practice.
And what we have not gotten to in the discussion on this is also the whole shape. And this is what we're talking about here, the whole shape of the Office of Emergency Services. This is expanding into a new territory now. And this is where I see the need to have a separate competent fire coordinator to be able to carry on those activities within this office. Because as the organizational chart shows, there is EMS. And we have been working for years on looking at a countywide EMS system. And as we have looked at that, it's been accepted that there's going to be greater demands on the Office of Emergency Services. Now, I have a feeling we're going to pick up the discussion on EMS and what that looks like. COVID threw a wrench in the works, or else Supervisor Garrity would have carried on more of this year to get us towards an end. We don't know exactly what that end is going to be, but it's very likely that the county is going to have a bigger role in managing the emergency medical services in the county, full or partial. And that is going to take the efforts of the director of the Office of Emergency Services to guide that group. And there's going to be a lot of discussion around this table about what the shape of that is. If you think fire coordinator is taking a lot of discussion time right now, the EMS is going to take a huge amount because that's going to be a big shift. So in setting up the Office of Emergency Services for success, I really see that separating out the fire coordinator from the Office of Emergency Services, having that be a standalone position filled by a qualified individual that has the ability to carry out the flexible time on this, and have that taken care of. It gives the time for the director of the Office of Emergency Services time to concentrate on the new and emergency management services requirements, things that are going to be coming down the line. Not to mention all of the regular operations of the offices that's required for emergency management that goes on, and seeing this all through. So, Supervisor Diamond and Supervisor Bramer.
Mr. Chairman, to your point about emergency medical services, the city has a state-of-the-art emergency medical response team. And from my perspective, we've done a very good job, and participating in that conversation going forward, I think it would be brief on my behalf to suggest that anything other than the city handling and being independent of their own emergency medical services wouldn't be a conversation that I would undertake.
Okay. Supervisor Bramer?
Thanks. I appreciate your comments about not micromanaging, but I do think that it's important that the county and the committee structure, as you so often refer to and defer to, it's important that the committee actually have a handle on this. And like you just mentioned, there's a bigger picture of how are we going to fit this in with the EMS situation going forward. So I think it's important that not just your opinion, Mr. Chairman, get considered, but all of us about where we want to go in the future and how we want to structure this office with the fire coordinator. And frankly, with our EMS coordinator, who is sitting right here, who we haven't heard from, and also does a lot for the county. So I know you mentioned tabling and didn't want to do that, but I'm going to make a motion that we table to have this considered, fleshed out a little bit more, and bring it back to committee so that all of us have an opportunity to look at the position of the structure.
Well, second.
There's no discussion on the way to lay on the table, so call the question.
Could we have a roll call, please?
That's so required. Roll call.
Mr. Leggett,
No.
Mr. Simpson,
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
Yes.
Ms. Seaborn,
Yes.
Ms. Shepherd.
Yes.
Motion to table that.
Okay. Now, what I request of the committee are exactly what the committee requires. What answers does the committee want to hear at the next meeting? Ms. Seaver.
Mr. Chairman, would this be a good opportunity to hold a joint meeting with our shared services? And perhaps, I know Mr. Garrity stepped out, I'm sure he was called away, but he is the EMS coordinator or the EMS chair of that committee. You put a lot of stock and discussion into what that's going to look like and those challenges moving forward. So perhaps this is an excellent opportunity to meet committees. And I know it's unusual, but to have shared services and the EMS committee that was created last year by Chairman Thomas to all be on the same page and have some more discussions. That a lot of that came up by Supervisor Diamond, and I hadn't even thought of that.
Okay. I don't think it falls under shared services, but it's joint committee.
Well, I thought one of the priorities this year was to talk about more shared services.
Who are we sharing?
Well, the idea that Supervisor Diamond had with another fire department. I mean, I know I'm not going to make the assumption he's preferring Glens Falls because I know he represents Glens Falls here, but I'm sure he's thinking about the county as a whole as well and other fire departments. But I am a little concerned as well, and maybe we need to go into executive session. But I heard here today we have selected a candidate. I don't know if we've made an offer to a candidate. I'm a little worried about the territory that we're in with that as well.
We can, I'll defer to the chairman of the board here as far as guidance on moving this issue forward. What would you see, Mr. Chairman?
As far as the fire coordinator, I think we're, other than maybe the way it was put together, I think we're on a good path right here. I think it is a separate position and it should be treated that way. Obviously, the committee doesn't agree with the process that is taken, so it's been tabled, and so we'll have to work that out and come to a conclusion. I think overall, we're talking about a little less than $2,500 additional expense for the county to make this a separate position. So I don't see, I don't see the deep savings.
Okay. Well, perhaps we can arrange a joint meeting. Again, I don't see where our shared services comes in because shared services is usually with another realm within the county. So it's what other committee does it fall under?
Shared services.
On shared services.
Well, is Mr. Beatty? I don't think he's on the call today, but I think it would be worth a discussion with him as well about it. I mean, I thought one of the priorities this year were to look at innovative ways to save money and to serve our taxpayers to the best of our ability. I'm also a little uncomfortable with this ongoing discussion since it was tabled. So.
Well, what I'm looking for is the guidance when we come back to the table. What information do you require us to present?
I can hear you clearly, Mr. Leggett, and I hear what you are asking. My concern is that this was tabled, we voted on it, and perhaps that dialogue could take place in an email correspondence. We could survey for what committee members are looking for. We can come back together and have a working group of the entire board. But here today, it was tabled.
Give me 3 items to start with. Supervisor Bramer.
I would like information about other similarly sized counties and whether they have a separate fire coordinator. I would like the answer to the question of could we repeal the county law that created the fire coordinator position? Not so that we could totally get rid of it, but so that we could consider whether we can join it with another position. So salary, study.
Okay.
Repealing the law. And what was the third thing? Looking into increasing the salary for our EMS coordinator.
That seems to be separate part of the fire coordinator.
Is it? Okay.
It would be a comparative study.
Okay. Supervisor Seaver, what would you like?
Well, I would like a little bit of time now that I've actually gotten some information about this position to digest it, to do my homework. to make good informed decisions about it. And I'd be happy to get back to you with a list of information I would like. On face value, what I would like is that external salary study to be done on face value of what we've talked about here today. I think there's multiple things that I would like additional information on. I'd like to know who applied, who was selected, what their qualifications were, what the legal ramifications are now moving forward, the authorization to increase that salary, the committee structure in terms of what we have the ability to review and discuss without micromanaging, as you indicated. There's a lot of information I'd like to know more about, but also I'd like to know our policy out of HR for civil service and non-civil service positions in terms of their advertising. So I can, rest assured we're all following a consistent policy and reaching all of the possible applicants we could. But that's just off the top of my head, but I'm happy to spend some time on it, Mr. Leggett.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to find out if there's any interest in any of the current fire departments within Warren County that might be interested in handling this responsibility.
Okay. Any other? Okay, there are none. We'll move on. Director Mason, anything you'd like to say before we close this section?
No, I think we have some research to do, got some questions to answer, and I'll try to do them as quickly as we can get to them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'll adjourn the Office of Emergency Services and we'll go on to Sheriff's agenda.
Was there public comment?
Don, any public comment?
No, Chairman Leggett, no public comment on YouTube as of now.
Thank you. Sheriff, you have the lecture. First, action item, request transfer of funds within Sheriff's Office budget to address services salary. Thank you all.
Yes, the first is a simple request to transfer funds to address deficits in our salary codes.
Motion brings to the floor. Supervisor Simpson on first. Is there a second?
Second.
Supervisor Shepherd, thank you. Any questions?
Hi.
Supervisor Bramer. Thanks. Sorry. I'm assuming, just give me 1 second, Sheriff, sorry. How are we doing with overtime?
Very well. As you all know, we all feel it. COVID has impacted our agency, and one would expect that our overtime numbers would be through the roof. In a 4-year comparison for the prior 4 years, and for law enforcement services, we're down 15% currently. And for corrections, we're actually down 35%. It looks as though this is a trend. This is something that occurs in our budget process every year between October and November. We have to move money out of regular codes into overtime, part-time codes where there are deficits. But we are doing very well this year.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Supervisor Shepherd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, thank you for being here and thanks for all your hard work so far this year. I know this has been a challenging and unprecedented year. You said to cover deficits. What's the reason for the deficit? Is it strictly 100% the overtime issue?
We ask for a number in the budget in these items to be realistic. And I would have to defer to the supervisors because every year they are significantly under budgeted. So I would ask you to reach out to them to determine why they are under budgeted.
Can you be more specific? I'm sorry, you lost me there. When you say supervisors, do you mean us or you mean within your?
No, we have a meeting with the supervisors. We have budget meetings. I did so last year and this year. And each year, for instance, 2019, the adopted amount was $257,500.
Okay.
The actual amount spent was $511,290. So we look at numbers and try to budget accordingly. I believe the reason that that occurs is to keep the tax levy low.
Oh.
We know that there are going to be surpluses in regular salaries. So rather than budgeting an amount that actually hits the number for overtime, we attempt to take the money where there's surplus in regular salaries, transfer that into overtime. The reason that there are surpluses in those items just equates to vacancies and positions that occur throughout the year.
But, may I? I've never been the budget officer, Sheriff. So what I'm hearing you say is that you know you're gonna spend more money every year, and every year this board budgets significantly less. By your numbers here, you're talking a couple hundred. You're talking a lot of money. And you're with the idea that then we just do these transfers at the end of the year and make up for it then?
You have it very clear, that's correct.
I'd like a response from our budget officer then, is that correct?
I have no response.
What do you mean?
No response.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, is there a way that we could please address the sheriff's concern?
Yes, we can. And I think some of it, Sheriff, that you run short on manpower on the regular salaries, especially on corrections.
Yeah.
So, and that makes overtime a tough one to handle sometimes. Is that correct?
My question to the sheriff, are you asking for money out of the fund balance?
No,
No, you're not. It's just internal, the codes from part-time salaries or overtime salaries from regular salaries, correct?
yes,
It's not a huge thing. I think everybody who budgets does this from time to time in their town budget, county budgets. You have changes in the budget where you maybe come up short on a personnel straight time issue that you transfer in. It's done. I can't specifically address the 2020, but I can tell you in 2021, you budget the best of your ability and you come up short, you make a budget transfer. We're not taking more money out of the coffers from the taxpayers to make up the shortfall. We may be taking it from a point part-time salary or a overtime or from a 0.1 salary and transferring it. It's not unusual. It happens a lot. It happens at every community.
it's actually consistent. I only went back to 2016, so a 5-year snapshot. And this practice has occurred and has been voted on and approved every year for the past 5 years.
I think we can do better now. So we can schedule out, take a look, and we'll improve our budget.
Yeah, but I mean, it's if we were taking more money out of the taxpayers, I would be extremely concerned. But I don't believe we are.
Yeah, for these two budgets, jail and road patrol, the reason why, if there is a reason why you under budget the overtime is because you have changes, you have turnover in the regular salary line. It always happens. So you budget the salaries based on who's in those positions. You're going to have savings in that line. If you over budget overtime, even though you know you're going to spend the money, you're raising tax dollars that you don't need to raise because you have to acknowledge that there's going to be money here that you can move over to fix the whole year.
For example, if you have a retiring 20-year veteran and you replace with a new recruit, there is a savings. Correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we can never predict or project those retirements. We don't know when people are going to be leaving, but it is safe to say every year in those two large groups, we're going to have retirement separation.
Well, I mean, please forgive me. I'm ignorant to this process, but I believe with position budgeting, every position salary is put into the budget as long with fringe and so that's all built in to the budget. And then it's a guesstimate on overtime. It's a guesstimate on part-time. And you do the best you can. This is not out of the norm. And that's all I say. I mean, this is done everywhere. If somebody wants to change it, change it.
For example, we have on the books here, 79 correction officers. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth in there.
Well,
so many are listed.
That one there, Craig, is then that we don't always fill those positions. So you're going to, where you have a straight time position in the budget and you don't fill the position, then you're gonna have overtime for the other officers, so you will be taking some out of that straight time position and transferring it in to cover the overtime for not having the position filled because of either the testing or vacancies, and that's been going on since Commissioner Corrections came in and said, you are going to staff 13 extra positions, and that's the way it goes every year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And follow the rules of board. I share in Sheriff LaFar's frustration, and I agree with you, Supervisor Leggett, we can do better. And I do think that this is an opportunity as he looks at his discussions with the public on police reform. And I mean, I read about it in the paper, but what our sheriff is trying to do in terms of determining, does he have enough staff? How does he budget accordingly? How does he meet the needs of our community and community policing? So I hope this is an area that we don't wait till the end of the year to start talking about these significant deficits. And we talk about them throughout the year and try to support our sheriff's office with them.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor say, oh, Chairman Thomas.
I guess my recommendation would be to look at the year-end report, how whatever year you want to pick, how the sheriff's department ends up and the amount of money that's left, and if you want to make changes, that's what you change. You reduce his budget by that amount of money because obviously he's got too much money.
Yeah, can I just clarify that? It's not a deficit.
No.
Right.
It's not a deficit in the budget. The overall budget's not a deficit.
Correct.
So when people think there's deficit, thinks that he's running short of money. It's not a deficit in the overall sheriff's department budget. It may be a deficit in overtime code or part-time code or vice versa, but it's not a deficit. We're not borrowing from fund balance for the sheriff's department to run.
So we summed up all the point one.
Yeah.
Call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Going to take number 2 and number 3 together. These are agreements for services. Motion to bring both to the floor. Supervisor Simpson, Supervisor Bramer, any discussion? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries for 2 and 3. Discussion items. Sheriff, you want to fill us in on inmate population?
Yes, our population as of this morning is 96 inmates. Of those, 18 are federal inmates. And we just had 7 transported out. So our numbers have, it seemed like they've plateaued out and they remain pretty steady now in the 80s and 90s. And I see that being a consistent number for us, if not continuing to grow. Yes.
Sorry to put you on the spot. It's okay if you don't know. I certainly don't know. I'm just wondering how the federal inmate revenue, whether it's picked back up again, or do we have to?
Absolutely. I'm confident we're going to hit our mark that we budgeted for. I was really very nervous in April. We had an early meeting, and our relationship with the U.S. Marshals and the area director is healthy. I know that they appreciate the services that our correctional facility provides, and I'm confident that we will continue to receive their inmates.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Sheriff, you had a very productive stakeholders meeting. Can you fill us in on number 2 on police reform and Reinventors Collaborative?
Yeah. So back in June, an executive order was issued by the governor for government, for the municipality, any municipality that has a police force, to direct the police force to do a comprehensive review and examination of their operations, to convene a group of stakeholders, which we've done, and to develop a plan for us to take a look at how we're working and find areas where we can improve and reinvent policing in Warren County. We took our time with the early portion of the process. We've identified some training needs that we're going to have. We've made some changes to our operations, our procedures, policies and procedures. And we had a first meeting of stakeholders last week. I hope all of you had an opportunity to watch that meeting. I found that it was very productive. And our wheels were already spinning, but after that meeting, they're spinning even faster. I think that great things are in store as far as policing and law enforcement goes in Warren County. I think we're in a great place already, but I know that we're just going to continue to improve. The stakeholders meeting was, for me, it was challenging because I confidently, sincerely feel that we have 64,000 stakeholders in Warren County. Everybody in our county is a stakeholder. I wanted to include as many of you as I could, but cautiously, the public, if they're going to trust us, they need to have as many members of the public engaged in that stakeholders meeting as possible. And it was county employee heavy as it was. What I'd like to offer to all of you is if you'd like to have an independent meeting with the Board of Supervisors members, I can start right over from scratch and we can go through right from the introductions about that executive order, everything that's entailed, where we're at right now and where we hope to go by April 1st. In the meeting, and nothing has changed, our governor put together a timeline that is not only unreasonable, but it's not fair. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to our members. He's asking us to do something that could potentially take years, and he's asking us to undertake this if we do it legitimately in a very short, narrow window of time. We will have a plan in place that we present to this board for the board meeting in March, something we'll have to adopt by April 1st. So it will be voted on in the March meeting, but that will not be the end of our process. And I hope it would not be the end of your involvement in our process. We're going to continue to take a look at what we're doing, continue to hope to grow and improve, and provide as much feedback on our progress as any of you wish. It's going to be released to the public, but we work with you for you, so we want you engaged and involved as well.
Thank you. We can arrange that. And then at our previous meeting here, was there a hand up? Oh, Supervisor.
May I ask the chair?
Yes.
Sure, just a quick question relative in the arena of public health. As far as COVID and the inmate population at our correctional facility, has anyone tested positive at the facility?
I regret saying the words, but no, we've been fortunate. Very early on, we closed visitation. I understand the hardships that creates for our inmates and their families. I sincerely do. And our practices, our safety practices for our employees and our inmates have been second to none. We take it very seriously, and we know it's right outside our door, but we're doing everything we can to keep it outside our door.
Well, congratulations. That's amazing.
Thanks.
It really is.
Briefly, Supervisor Brenner.
Yep, really fast. On the police reform, I just wanted to make a comment that I appreciate you meeting, and I understand that you're meeting separately with a smaller group out of Glens Falls, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
Also, Sheriff, Public Defender Flores brought up the point that she needs more office space, and our TAP court takes up some space that she could use. Would you entertain taking TAP court over into your building if that was a possibility?
I believe I brought it up in a Public Safety Criminal Justice Committee meeting early on. It's something we were taking a look at. None of our locations in-house are ideal. I will say yes, we'll continue to look. Anytime, one, it would represent a savings to the county, and two, if we can eliminate an opportunity for a detainee to be transported to an outside location to attend court, that's better for us, it's safer for them. So we want to do that. I will say that I would hope that you would not ask me to do that until the restrictions relating to COVID are lifted.
Thank you. Anything else to come before the committee at this time? Hearing none, call for adjournment. Supervisor Seaver, Supervisor Diamond, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion carries. Committee closed. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.